To a COP28 side event, your career in addressing climate change. Gives me great pleasure to introduce two speakers today. Kate McBride, who's the Director of Human Resources Administration and ICT Division at the United Nations Framework for Climate Change. The second speaker is Bruno Pozzi, Deputy Director from Ecosystems Division from the United Nations Environment Program. With that, over to you.
Start with a few questions to warm us up a little bit. I'm just curious, who in the room is interested in climate change? Okay, great, good. Got the right audience. Okay, who is working in climate change or for an entity involved with climate change? About half, okay. So you guys are already in. We're going to see how we can talk about staying in and perhaps looking at how the others can come into the UN system around climate change. So Bruno and I will talk a little bit about our stories and how we got to where we are, and have an exchange then with you, maybe on some interests and tips and tricks about how to navigate to the system to become part of what climate change does. One last question. Do you know which UN entity is behind the organization of this COP? Anybody want to raise their hand and belt? Yes. So that's us. So I am from the secretariat that all the colleagues put together to make sure that wherever the COP is taking place, you can arrive here safely, engage safely and respectfully, and also then help us around the climate change issues. So that is sort of this is a flagship event for climate change. And there's many more things that we do throughout the year that I'll talk about. So first, just a little bit about me. So I'm Kate. I've been in the UN system for over 25 years. I actually started my career in finance, and then ended up moving more into information and data management. And my entry was almost as simple as this conversation that I just had with you. I had read an article about information management at a UN agency in Rome, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and I happened to be in Rome, and I called the author of the article, and she said, I would like to talk to you. And that was really, I had an interest in the UN and how information was being used, and that's what really started my connection. And the theme, I think, throughout my career was I have met people along the way that I found interesting that I wanted to work with or for, and I have met people that I wanted to have working with me or for me. So looking both up and sideways, but also looking around and seeing who would be interesting in a team. So my career really started with reading an interesting article and making that connection on my own. So I think the importance of initiative. From FAO, I went to World Food Program, and from there to Kosovo. So it was at the following unrest there, and then entered into UN peacekeeping. And in peacekeeping, we travel around the world. What was always interesting was A, how we traveled, and then B, what the conditions were like when we were there, both for us and then obviously the populations that we were supporting. In that role, I was really involved in ICT. So how does ICT help in a peacekeeping operation, either with the exchange of information or having information to understand how we would be working with civilian populations? From peacekeeping, I was then in the Office for the Coordination of the Humanitarian Affairs, which is known as OCHA, which is in the news quite now, which is very active with the two situations that we have going on in the world. And it was really in OCHA, I think, that my maybe passion for loving the planet and my skills around technology and finance came together. And I was part of a team that really looked at the UN, how we operate around the world and how we do that, and really from a technology point of view. And we came up with this idea of work anywhere and everywhere, but with a lighter green footprint. And it was really, this was the shift to cloud-based computing that happened in the sort of early 2010s through the 2015. So I was part of that shift of how, when we're flying into humanitarian situations, whether, similar to how we organize a COP, OCHA is responsible for bringing in medical teams, bringing in logistics, but one of the things that we wanted to move away from was moving in with IT equipment that we didn't need. So how could we use cloud-based services for that? And then following OCHA, I moved to Nairobi. So the UN has basically 4 regions that we work in. So one is Africa. So I went to the Africa region in Nairobi. Another region is the Americas. Another is Asia Pacific, and then the Middle East. And in Nairobi, the green tech part really came out. So Bruno can talk about that. First of all, the campus is beautiful. Kenya is beautiful and green. It has beautiful sunshine. And on our campus, we had actually 3 very large data centers and a large sort of generator plant that was there as backup. And that's where having had this experience at OCHA, where we don't need to have all this literal physical stuff in order to operate and be efficient. I really looked at how we could take this idea of working anywhere and everywhere a step further. And so we worked to move the campus from having to have your computing services around you to having them cloud-based. One of the challenges in Africa, including in Kenya, was connectivity. So at that point, this is 2018, 2019, we still did not have in our homes, like what we have today now post-COVID, all the Netflix and the great high-speed internet. So one of the things that we took on was when we looked at how the UN would be able to help people work from anywhere and everywhere with a lighter environmental impact, is we partnered with Safaricom, which is a large telecom provider. So we needed to understand how we could push connectivity out to everybody. And everybody has one of these, right? Even if people didn't have internet in their home, everybody had this internet. So the plan there, which ended up becoming the reality, was working with the private sector to see how we could push out data packages to staff phones in the case of an emergency or a need. And can anyone guess what that emergency or need was in March 2020? It was the pandemic. So we had pretty much finished this big shift to cloud-based services to see that people could work from anywhere and everywhere at the end of 2019, and then the pandemic hit in 2020. So many of these other things that we had put in place, thinking if we had an emergency or we had to do some massive evacuation, we would bring these services on. Well, with COVID, it really tested us. And what we were able to do was really in a short period of time, the UN support team in Nairobi, we were the first ones to go virtual. So we shifted all the ICT services to the cloud, including the service desk, et cetera. This is one of my lessons in, I guess, in life, but in particular in the UN, and I think you see it in the climate change process. So the technology was ready, but maybe what wasn't was the mindset, of staff and managers to all of a sudden work differently. So we had to sort of deal with this, a little bit of a panic of, oh my gosh, I can't see people, or I can't see them like I am here in 3D. I'm seeing them through this team circle. So when the pandemic hit, the technology, what we had done worked, but what we really found was the need to figure out ways to have people still connect as humans in this kind of scary time, right? And also a new way of working. And that's where we really, I think, in these types of events as we're having today, what I've always thought is you can have the idea, you can have the technology, but it's really where, again, you need people. To understand that we work differently together. So where does I don't even want to call it a network, but who do you know that can help you work through some new solutions to understand what the challenges might be? But I think it's also what we found in the pandemic and in the UN. It's not just looking who can help you, but how can you help others? And throughout my career, I have, as I started at the beginning, I have found people that I've been interested in working with and for, and they have supported me. But then to give that back, to understand who is a good fit and who should come into the organization. And that's what we hope to do today, really, is to have you understand, if you're thinking about a career at the United Nations, what is it that we're looking for? How do you want to prepare yourself for that? And then how do you kind of succeed in a rather large system? Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about why you might want to consider UNFCCC. The first tip is, when you are interviewing for UNFCCC, is you call it UNFCCC. Because everybody stumbles, and it's like the kindest thing you can do when you're interviewing somebody is just, because everybody goes, whoa, and they try to say climate. So we are just UNFCCC or the Climate Change Secretariat. But that's tip one, I think most of us know us through the association, both with COP, but also the Paris Agreement is another tagline when people are like, I don't really get what you do. If you say Paris Agreement, at least there's some sort of recognition of, yeah, that's familiar. And then also the Kyoto Protocol. So we have, 198 parties. I think we have one of the largest memberships of UN entities. Everything from, Australia to the Vatican is in. Okay, Tony. Tony, I don't know how I'm going to communicate with you to change the slide. Okay, so this is who we are, this structure. Sure, sorry. I have a non-rolling chair. Can everybody hear me? Good. So, UNFCCC. I was going to say, does everybody know where Bonn, Germany is? We're kind of over up towards the French side. Okay, we're small, so a lot of people don't even know that we're there. It was the capital of Germany when it was West Germany before the Berlin Wall fell. And our campus is actually the former seat of the German government. So we're using their Congress Hall, et cetera, as our office. We have, in addition to the headquarters, we have these 6 regional centers. And these centers are quite small, though. If the headquarters has 430 people, in the regional centers, we have about 5 to 10 people. And they tend to be embedded either in the environment ministries or in the multilateral banks. So it's a small setup. How we're organized, it's really 2 big groups. So the purple kind of group is where I sit in operations. And we're the people that manage the stuff in the back. So first of all, the people that do all the organization around the COP are here, so conference affairs. So they deal with the host country, so in this case, the United Arab Emirates, and understanding what we would need in terms of meeting rooms, catering, IT. We have legal affairs, so we engage in a lot of agreements, both not just around the 3 treaties around COP, Paris, and Kyoto, but we engage in a lot of partnerships with both with private sectors, academia, et cetera, so legal affairs manages those. That's legal affairs. And then you have my mega division. So my division is basically a quarter of the organization. We're about 110 people. And my awesome team is responsible for, we handle all of finance, procurement, budget, which is getting approved, human resources, why I'm here, and then ICT. So that's the operations side. We're not the people that you generally see in the negotiating room. The people you see in the negotiating room are in that sort of pastel color area, what we call the programs. And those are linked into the Paris Agreement. So we have the area of mitigation. They're really the group that is implementing the Paris Agreement. Yeah, so all of the sort of Article 6 related. Then we have transparency. Most people are familiar with the different reporting tools and review boards that we have. So governments have taken the pledge to reduce or increase certain activities, and they are reporting those through the tools that the Transparency Division develops and manages. Then we have adaptation, which is what it says, but it's also quite interesting. They do a lot. You'll see them around work with Indigenous people, and they have been the one that have been leading the work on loss and damage. So what is the big success that we've already all had and appreciated, right? So the establishment of the Climate Impact Response Fund, I think is what they're calling it. So that's adaptation. And then we have means of implementation. So you have agreements out of the different decisions that come out of the COP and to a certain extent the June meetings. There are things then that the parties need to do in order to implement what they've agreed to. So the means of implementation is we try to help countries understand how they can do that. So this is where you have the work around the nationally determined contributions, and the NAPs is coming through the means of implementation. So you have operations and then programs. I think generally most people are meeting up with the program people. And then in the middle we have our senior leadership, which we call the executive. So the head of our organization, Simon Steele, who was at the opening plenary. And so that sort of strategic direction and engagement with partners is led by the executive division. Okay, Tony. Am I taking? Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit. Okay, so here we are as a workforce. Many really interesting things. I see we're really flagging women here. But we are very fortunate at FCCC is we have an excellent gender and geo balance. So this whole idea of being inclusive, but what happens when you get a bunch of people that are thinking and operating differently, it makes work sort of more interesting, and we find it tends to make the solutions a little more creative, and perhaps as we deal with climate change and the variety of things that get thrown at us, that this diverse workforce is really quite interesting and powerful and pretty fun to be a part of. We're split into two groups in there. So you have this international staff where we are, people like me, you're kind of a career UN person, you move around the organizations and the globe. And then we have a support staff, which is generally local. In the case of Bonn, they tend to be European Union nationals that are there. A big consultant for us. I think, as you guys know from decisions, we have to lead dialogues and write different reports. So we will bring consultants in to work with the experts to do a one-off or a two-off on a report or paper. Those are opportunities also for you, and those opportunities are posted on our website. So, and they're not always in Bonn, they can be remote. So your expertise can be tapped into to help on a report. So it's also a nice way to see if we're the right kind of organization for you, is to come in through a consultancy. We also have a fleet of interns, so I see 123 in 2022. Right now we have about 53. And those are both remote and in person. So you don't have to move to Bonn and get an apartment, et cetera. You can operate from wherever you are and contribute that way. So that is the workforce. So what we're looking for, everything. Really, I would say overall what we want is positive, creative, collaborative personalities. So you may not be those every single day, but for the most part, that's what we're looking for. Some people do say climate change and where we're going can be kind of daunting and in fact depressing. So you have to come in with this attitude that things are getting better and work with the science to help us work to get the solutions. But we really cover everything. So we need people in communications, we need people in law, we need statisticians, data analysts, we're moving big into AI. We need people that do the training. So a lot of the outreach that we do to the LDCs and the SIDS is we have people that are going in either virtually to lead a workshop or doing a hybrid on the ground. We also have my area, so ICT, there's a lot of opportunity, human resources, budget and finance. Actually, we're really, it's a real weakness in the UN system lately is finding people with finance skills and sort of public accounting skills. So that would be another area. But pretty much anything that you are probably doing now has some sort of a way into our organization. And I think through the Q&A, we'll maybe get to that, yeah, where you could say, how do I find my way into your organization? Okay. So I kind of talked about personalities. Bruno will have probably something similar. Across the UN, we have a set of common values, what we call our core values. And those are, I think, are common to good human behavior, right? So one is professionalism, yeah, that we do the best that we can, fairly in the right amount of time with the right amount of resources. Integrity, yeah, that we're working honestly and fairly in what we're doing. And then respect for diversity, that regardless of who we are or what we look like, that we are operating with the same fairness and equity and equality for those colleagues that are around us. And also in events like this, yeah, we move in and out of a lot of different cultures, but there's no judgment about that. Then the competencies there, these competencies are important when you apply. So different jobs require different competencies or will highlight different competencies. So at a managerial level, for example, all jobs will be applying professional expertise. So if you are a data scientist, you would come in with your professional expertise around using different data tools, whether it's Power BI or SAS, whatever. But if you are a manager, a big one is generally about being accountable. Yeah, how do you ensure that what you've been asked to do with the people and the money that you deliver against that program? So the job openings highlight certain competencies. Who is familiar with a competency-based interview? Okay, yeah, this is, so maybe that would be a good question to ask me about, but these competencies are important, one, when you're looking at the job, because it tells you what are the ingredients for you as a skilled professional that we want. And then when you make it to the interview stage, you are asked questions around these competencies. You are asked for an example, yeah? So please provide me an example of when you were in a new team and had to deliver a result within a very limited amount of time. How did you approach the problem and what challenges did you meet? And you need to be able to respond with how you delivered those results, yeah? So we test the competency, and it's not theoretical, yeah? We're looking for real examples that you did on the job, yeah? Or it doesn't even have to be on the job, in your life. You know, you can use it, I don't know, managing, you know, meals in your home or taking care of children. It can come from anywhere, but the idea is that you have concrete experience, not necessarily a theoretical example. So when looking to come in, the UNEPs are slightly different, but they tend to they're around these competencies. You want to be familiar with them, and you want to be prepared to provide an example of those when you're being interviewed. Okay, we have all different types of employment opportunities. I think I touched on a couple. One way that colleagues come in is through this individual contractor or consultant. So you come on for a specific project or a specific paper for a specific amount of time and a specific amount of money. Yep. The other we have temporary positions, so these might be longer term. They're generally not longer than 2 years. But again, maybe we have a project that needs longer term capacity, so that's a temporary. We have fixed term positions, so those are, you come on and the contract is from 2 to 3 years, but those are longer term. You're most likely making a career in climate change or in the UN, the fixed term. And I don't know why we have staff vacancies over there, but we generally always have vacancies. So a thing I would say about the vacancies too at FCCC, internal people tend to move around in the organization. So we have a lot of vacancies because people are moving around in the organization, which is, I think, a positive thing. Yeah, people want to stay in the organization, but they're looking for a different opportunity. So the vacancies stay pretty consistent. For young talent, which we all are, there's a couple. One is to come there. There's the UN volunteer program known as UNV, so that's one way. We have internships. These are unpaid, so that can sometimes be a little bit of a disincentive, but they are remote too. You do need to be currently in your studies for those, so you can have completed your undergrad or your graduate. We have 2 fellowship programs really focused on qualified individuals from least developed countries. And these are phenomenally popular and extremely competitive. I would actually say the fellowship program is probably more competitive than for a regular job, but give it a shot. And those are posted on our website. So they happen like twice a year. You put in a rich resume, really highlighting, again, practical, concrete examples of your work in climate change, and then there's a big vetting process. I am happy to select people from the fellowship program, so I encourage that. And if you don't make it the first time, do it again. So if you don't make it the first time, it doesn't mean you're not going to be considered. You just have to give it another shot. I think we have about 30 fellows that come in 2 different tranches. And it's part working with us, and then there's an academic part of that too. So that's a very interesting and successful program. Then there's something called the Junior Professional Officer. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, also known as the JPO. Junior Professional Officers, other parties, member states, fund a position in our organization or multiple positions in our organization. And sometimes that is intended then for us to hire someone from that country. But we have some countries that sponsor then nationals from least developed countries. So you want to look out for those. The JPO is usually, it's a junior level, it's our entry level. And they're usually from 2 to 3 years, in some interesting cases, 4. But you usually go through 2 selections. One selection is at your country level, that they say, okay, we want you into we'll put you into the JPO pool, and then FCCC selects you from that pool. Okay, here is our current openings. As I said, so now is a little slow time, which I'm kind of glad because we have the COP going on. But you want to watch this. New vacancies are published every Friday. You can see there where the fellowship is, and then the internships. So I would just, I guess that QR code will take you there. I have to say, when you're going to work on an application, it's not Indeed.com or Monster.com. It is a multi-hour.com project. So just be prepared for that. You can't see something that's awesome and say it closes tomorrow and wait till tomorrow before it closes. If you see it, you want to think and plan, because it's still, unfortunately, a somewhat cumbersome process to apply. Okay. Is that, okay, all right. So maybe the last thing, I think this is my last slide, is just where we are. And where we are is, you can see the Rhine River coming there. We have just the most, I think, okay, so I'm coming from Nairobi, which was really beautiful where we worked. I've been all over, but we are on the Rhine River, and if you like to walk, bike, just sit and look at beautiful things. This living along the river is just fabulous. So I always thought it would be interesting to work in a place where I could ride, so I was in New York City most of my career, where I could ride my bike to the pharmacy or ride my bike to the office or ride my bike to the baseball field, and you can do all of that in Bonn. It's really, it's not a big city, it's 300,000 people, so you have everything. You have opera, baseball, soccer, food is okay, but you really get to, you can be around nature very accessibly, but you can also be on a train and be in Paris or Berlin quite easily. So as a location, I have to say I have a nice family. We couldn't be happier with where we're living. So I think that is it from me. Thank you. We'll do the Q&A after. So now over to Bruno.
Thanks, Kate, and good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming. It's a large crowd. It's really pleased because it's quite late in the day and already 1 week in the COP, so the level of energy is what it is. But I see that you bring that energy in the room, and I'm really thankful for such a big crowd. So my name is Bruno Pozzi. I'm the Deputy Director of the Ecosystems Division of the UN Environment Program, based in Nairobi, as Kate has said. And actually, I see that many of the things that Kate, you can go to the next one. We don't need to see my face all the time. But
Double Bruno.
Double Bruno. But many of the things that Kate has said, I won't repeat, because indeed the processes are very similar to apply to UNEP or to UNFCCC. We're both part of the secretariat. Actually, UNEP as an organization was founded in 1972 after the Stockholm Conference. We'll be 51 now years old, and we in the UN framework, we were the last kid on the block. So you had the peace and security created first, the socio-economic work, and then they thought about the environment, which is good, which is really good. That's what we want. And indeed, we are the global voice on the environment. And so it's a little bit different than UNFCCC. We cover all the environmental matters. And you know that 1972, and then later the Rio Conference, and then it gave birth to the three conventions, the Rio Conventions, including UNFCCC, CBD, and UNCCD, the desertification. And these three are our children somehow, adult children now, very well-behaved children, but still very much linked as well to the mandate of UNEP, and we've got a lot of interaction and a lot of actually movement between the organization. As Kate was saying, that there's a lot of people moving inside the UN system once you're in, and it's very natural for someone from UNEP to go to work for the UNFCCC for a few years, then come back to UNEP, then go to CBD, then go to another MEA, and so on. But so this is who we are as an organization. As I said, based in Nairobi, we've got, I don't have the chart, and I'm so sad that I can't show it, but we've got 7 divisions in Nairobi that cover both the administration, the coordination of our organization, the communication of our organization, and then we've got what is our core business when it comes to the environment, a division that's called Industry and Economy, which is based partially in Paris and partially in Nairobi. We've got the Ecosystems division, which is mostly based in Nairobi, a law division, and an early warning and division, also known previously as the Science division. I finished by this one because actually science is very core to our mandate. We are a normative agency, so we are science-based. We come with facts, we come with data. We put these data, these facts into reports. That's our weapon, if I could say, to the world. And this is how we try to influence the global debate on the environment. And so you might have seen and you might have heard coming to the COP, we did publish 3 reports: the adaptation gap report, the emission gap report, the production gap report. Lots of statistics, lots of facts to guide the world to understand the depth of the crisis, and they're being very, very complementary with the secretariat as well in what we try to deliver. What we have as well inside our portfolio of agencies or things linked to UNEP are the MEAs, the Multilateral Environment Agreement. So the Ozone Secretariat is one which is very well known, which has really changed the way we addressed the ozone problem across the world. But we've got also the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm, which is more looking at the chemical side of the equation. And then on the nature side, we've got the CITES, the convention that looks at the trade of endangered species. We've got the CMS for the migratory species, and so on. And we've got also, and you see that in the UNEP work, under the regional offices, because we have a presence in each continent. As with regional offices, we've got, you can come back, we've got the INC, which is the international body that negotiates now the plastic treaty, which we hope to land in the next 2 years, and we hope, it's a very strong call from our executive director, to land this as a new MEA that will be Nairobi based, and that would increase the power of Nairobi as the global center on the environment. You've got to know that Nairobi is the only headquarter in the global south of the UN, so it's very important.
And it's cloud-based.
It is a beautiful compound indeed. Nairobi is a beautiful city to live in, and Kenya is a wonderful country to live in for those who love the environment. It's really a dream country to be in. So we've got a number of indeed constantly open jobs on our Inspira, which is the system, as Kate has described, where you do all your applications. At the moment, we've got 45 open positions at all levels. On average, 26.6 on a monthly basis are open. So there's always, just like UNFCCC and other agencies that work on the environment, there's always a turnover and jobs are opened. We're looking for also, just like UNFCCC, for a variety of profiles, from the very high level scientists to the program manager who can do it all, basically. But the science and the capacity to understand the science is very core in our business. So we're looking indeed for people who have an environmental profile or have been exposed through their life, like it's my case. I was not an environmentalist at the beginning, but I've been exposed to the environmental problems and issues in through my career, and then decided to take the step. And that was, I'm still very thankful that I took that step. I'm very happy that I joined UNEP. And so it means that you need to love the environment, you need to understand the environmental matters, but it's not a condition, a compulsory condition to join UNEP, except for certain profiles. If you come to, we're developing at the moment our digital transformation pillar, for example. There we're looking for people who understand the environment, who understand the artificial intelligence, who understand the challenges of digitalization. Definitely there's a profile there which is more technical, more substantial. But when it comes to program management, we have colleagues who have very strong profile on the environment and others who came to the environment through program management and have then adhered to the challenge and to championing these issues. I talked about the duty station. Nairobi is our main duty station. Yeah, close to 50% of our staff. We roughly have, good year, bad year, 1,300, 1,400 staff in UNEP, all categories included. And after Geneva, we've got about 15% based in Geneva, with a strong emphasis on our MEAs. Montreal is an important duty station. We've got the CBD, we've got the Ozone Secretariat, the Multilateral Fund Secretariat, based over there. And then we've got Paris, where we've got part of our economy division. But besides that, in total, 44 duty stations, some very, very small, some with a bit larger. We can go to the next slide. So we have the profile of the organization, and we are quite well balanced on the gender side with, I must say, the picture doesn't show it all, but we've got an overrepresentation in the higher ranks. So we need to do something there to change this. So don't hesitate. Apply at P4, P5 level if you can. This is really something where we need a better gender balance. So we're really making an effort. And where we're also making an effort, you will see that we're quite heavy on the Western European side. It's the big blue, nearly half of the circle. And we're really trying to rebalance this as well. There are historical reasons why we've got a high number of Western Europeans in the organization, also because we are a young organization, because environmental studies did not start in the global north, basically, but now they are present everywhere. We've got specialists everywhere, and we're really doing an effort, a really strong effort, and RED is very vocal on this, to get a better balance and a better representation. So if don't hesitate to apply. We still take from all regions, but definitely when at equal function and equal profile, we would really appreciate to have colleagues from the underrepresented regions. Now, the same thing as, we can go to the next slide, the same thing as Kate has said, we go through the UN system for recruitment, so it's a bit heavy. You need to be prepared, you need to go through the competency-based interview. So my tip on this one is do rehearse, put yourself in front of a mirror, think about the questions that could come, do a bit of theater, have a narrative well prepared, a few narratives were prepared to different questions that could come, but do demonstrate that you know the competencies, that you can act and react in situations where these competencies are needed, and so prepare yourself very strongly on this. So to do that, stay informed, look very often at job opportunities, take time, apply multiple times. I don't know of many colleagues who managed to get in at the first application. It takes patience, commitment, and preparedness, and be flexible. The dream job comes in your career, but might not be the first one you take. So look at the profile you have, look at the job opportunities, and try to see where there's a mix. And do try, because that's the beauty as well of this competency-based interview. You are evaluated on your competencies, on your capacity to implement what we are looking for in the profile, and of course the substantial knowledge, the understanding of the matter is important, but can be compensated if you do demonstrate a lot of competencies. And so remain committed, and try to get this growth inside the UN system. Yeah, I think, and then I don't know how we can do this, but we've got something much better than what I'm saying, which is how to apply to UNEP in 2 pages, which covers a lot of the things that Kate has said and that I'm saying now, and then an outreach mailing list. So do send your details to this outreach mailing list. Maybe we can put it back on. It's very simple to fill in, and our HR team is committed to get back to you with information, with the profiles. If you match some profile, we do have a data bank with the profiles that we receive. Of course, we cannot select from the data bank, but we can inform those who have put their names in the data bank that something is coming, so that you can see it and you can then apply. Okay, I think we've got now plenty of time. I probably forgot a lot of things, so do ask questions.
So I think that's what we do. We can ask you questions, or you can ask us questions. We can have a conversation. So, yeah, go ahead.
I'll just repeat myself. I'm wondering, I've just started browsing through the UN career, job opportunities. I'm wondering, I'm now working towards completing my PhD studies, my doctorate studies. Mm-hmm. And usually in the job requirement, it will say something like relevant experience in this whatever sector for the last, 1 to 3 years. Would you actually count, for example, PhD studies, doctorate studies as relevant job experience normally in your hiring process?
It's not normally considered as actual experience. You're given credit. There's some sort of formula, because we need that. And I think, as Bruno said, sort of science and facts, we're looking at academics a lot to provide us with that. But it's not a one-to-one, yeah? So 3 years in a program is 3 years of the experience. I think it's probably the same for you now.
It's the same, indeed.
Yeah.
You gotta be next to you, so I got the mic. So my name is Niha, ex-management consultant, currently working for the Abu Dhabi government, running climate projects, but would like to move to a more climate-focused organization. And I think the trouble I've been having when I've been looking for roles is a lot of climate organizations are not here in the region currently. And when you apply, sponsorship becomes an issue. How does UN deal with this? So if we were to apply to something in Bonn, I don't think Nairobi would be as much of an issue, but let's say Geneva, Montreal, how do you guys look at the whole sponsorship process? Are you open to doing that, or is it mostly people who have already been, already have access to it through their passport, etc.?
So, yeah.
It's the visa question, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you come in as an international professional, the organization, you come in as a United Nations international civil servant. So the visa is not an issue then. So, and that's really what we're talking about here, are these international rules. And we do actually have a regional collaboration center here in Dubai, UNFCCC, and there is also part of the resident coordinator system, so that is also here. There is a small presence, but you wouldn't, the visa, if you make it through the process, we manage your entry into the country.
Awesome. If I can just follow up very, very quick. The regional collaboration centers, how much of the programs are run out of there, or is it more of an admin type of space?
Actually, if you love admin, it's not the place for you, let me put it that way. No, so they are really engaged with all kinds of activities, especially if there's capacity, training, outreach to bring in other partners in the region. So we have these big regional climate weeks, which some people might be familiar of. So they would be dealing with other climate actors and people that want to, or entities, even both private and not-for-profit, that want to engage with UNFCCC. So it's an active, it's not an admin-y role.
This is the line where
Yeah.
questions are. It's also David.
Hello. So I imagine several other people in the room are also in my situation. I'm wondering, so for example, I'm a current university student. I know I want to work in an international context. I'm interested in environmental governance, environmental diplomacy. What sorts of positions are available for early career professionals? And assuming, you do need a few years of work experience before you enter the UN, what sorts of experiences do you think are best for students who are interested in working in an environment like the UN? The UNEP or UNFCCC.
We have a number of, we recruit from all levels as well, just like UNFCCC. So we got the GPO, who are sponsored by member states and usually very young professionals. We've got the UNVs, national, international. We do have interns. I know we very criticize, and rightly in my view, as secretariat, because we don't pay our interns, and that's actually not good, but we do recruit interns. So we recruit from I would say out of university to beginning of career as well. And then of course for the PE position, the higher you go in the PE position, in the professional positions, the longer your experience needs to be. But we have a number, and I know a number of colleagues who have started as interns or as consultants and have gone through a number of steps and have built their career also. And when they started, they had only very little experience in the field. So it is feasible, but you need to play with the different categories of professions if you want to start immediately in the UN system. A lot of other colleagues, like it's my case, come to the system a bit later. So you build experience outside of the UN system, and then suddenly you say, okay, I'm going to try and gonna go for it. So that's the two paths and two patterns are feasible, possible.
Okay.
Sorry, I got the mic.
So I've got two quick questions. Number one, I see that the UNEP internships accept recent graduates. How exactly is that defined, and does that extend to the UNFCCC? Is that is that a UN rule that they accept recent graduates for internships, or does it vary department by department? That's my first question.
So for UNFCCC, you must still be a student. So the host country, so Germany has that's their law. To come in as an intern, you have to still be in your studies. I don't know if that means.
And to my knowledge, it's not the case in UNEP, but it might vary indeed from duty stations to duty stations. The two that I know, Geneva and Nairobi, we got interns who had graduated, sometimes with a bit of work experience, but people want to build further experience in the UN system, and we are allowed to hire interns, and then the host country facilitates as well the procedures with what was asked before in terms of visa facility and so on. For the time of the internship, this is covered. But the sad thing, as I said, is that it is unpaid. So
My second question is about what languages is the UN currently lacking? Put another way, what language skills are you looking for? The U.S. State Department, for example, has a list of critical languages that they want people to develop to better serve the U.S. State Department. In a similar regard, is the UN prioritizing certain language skills over others? And if so, what might that be?
English is the working language. In Geneva, maybe you'll have more French, but we have 6 UN languages, and it can be treated as an advantage if you have whatever the working language is, so English, and we will say if you have a second one. But I don't think we really have a drought of any. It really is. I'm a native English speaker, so it's sort of an advantage, but we're really an English-speaking organization. Is that fair? Yeah.
Yes, and indeed we are guided by the 6 official languages of the UN. So when they are, I don't think, I would have to be corrected, but if I'm wrong, but we cannot say that we want a German-speaking personnel, for example, because German is not an official language of the UN. But we have some positions where language becomes important, because if I'm taking an example of we host a number of what we call regional Cs. And so we've got one in the Caribbean, for example, where the knowledge of Spanish or French can be an important element in the recruitment. But this is always within the family of UN official languages.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have the mic. Can I? I'm sorry. All right, so I have the two issues just for clarification. One is that I want to know if there are some jobs that are virtual or part-time that you can just be at home or your home region or country and do. That's one. And I also want to clarify how the recruitment process take into consideration national focal persons or national level structures that are also within the UNCCC system. For instance, if you are in Kenya, you have UNEP, and they'll have a say in the recruitment that you'd want to do. So those two issues to be clarified. Thank you.
I got it. Yeah, great. Two good ones. So for fixed term appointments, we're present in the country. We all have very flexible work arrangements now, yeah? So for example, at FCCC, you have to be in the office a couple days a week. But you must be what we call in the duty station. So you've got to be in the Bonn region. So for regular employment. But for the consultancies and even the internships now, those can be virtual, because it may be that you're doing research and preparing a paper. But the idea really is that you're present around the duty station. That's around the virtual. And then if you're a national focal point, I mean, I don't want to say any, but relevant experience to the job that you're applying for, regardless of where it is. So if it's as a national focal point or a representative as a sustainability officer in a bank, if it's relevant to the job, that's how it's treated. Yeah, it's the relevance of what you've been doing to that job that you're applying for. And my tip there would be, in this day of doing everything in batches or mass numbers, really look at the job that you're applying for and look at who you are and what your experience is and tailor it, yeah, to highlight your strength or experience to that job. The other part about nationality, and this is what Bruno talked about, is we want to be representative of the member states that have signed our treaties or are supporting UNEP. So we're pretty balanced at UNFCCC, but we're always looking for people from outside of Western Europe and the North Americas, yeah? So look at that. I mean, we do look to make sure that the workforce stays diverse. So there's opportunity there if you're coming from what we call underrepresented countries.
And I might give you a tip. A lot of us have got, it's my case, have got double nationalities. When you apply, look at the nationality that you put forward. If you've got a double nationality, weigh the two nationalities or three nationalities you might have. It might make a difference.
Yeah, that's one that's not often told. But in HR, we try to look at that with people to help them understand that if you're coming from an underrepresented country and you have two nationalities, sometimes that's useful. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if we're just moving away from the mic or, okay.
Yeah, I have the mic. My name is Tatiana. I'm a research associate at Bielefeld University, which is not far away from Bonn. And yes, indeed, when there is no river in the city, it's really challenging. I have rather a technical question on the application process at the UNFCCC, because it a bit differs from the INSPIRE process, and there is specific kind of subchapter of this application process called the performance appraisal. What does it mean? Is it recommendations?
Excellent. Okay. The performance appraisal is when you're in the UN system and actually outside too, you have it's like your report card of your job. So it's how have you been, it's a review. So in the UN system, we set out what our goals are, our objectives for the year, along with our supervisors and our team, and then we're evaluated throughout the year on how we're delivering against that. That's our performance appraisal. So within the UN system, I think we have to provide two whenever we apply. So I'm not actually sure why it's asking if you're external for that, but sometimes we will ask, I mean, people do submit appraisals that they've gotten, even if they're outside the UN system. I mean, generally, I got to tell you, we only see the good ones. Do you know what I mean? But that's what that is, the performance appraisal. So if you're external, most people would not have it.
Is it a plus if I'm an external and submit some appraisal, or?
Sure. I mean, I have to say, we look at the whole package. Another tip I would say is there's a motivation letter that you include, and you really want to sell yourself in that. Yeah, why you are the right fit with your skills to help us achieve what's in that job description. As opposed to, I would really like to work in your organization, I'm interested, you know, when people go real general, it's okay, but it is really your chance to kind of sell yourself. And I will say the motivation letter for me does catch me, like, this is interesting. Even sometimes it's quirky things. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I started planting pumpkins at age 6 and learned how to, you know, but just something that personalizes you, but you want to really say why what you have done is going to help you succeed in the job you're applying for.
Can I continue on this? Because I think it's so. In UNEP, the way we operate is that job offer. I mean,
Opening
is published, and the person who is going to lead the steps to the selection of the long list and the short list is usually the person in it. It's not an. I mean, it's supported by HR, but this person is a specialist. He's not an HR person. He's a substantial expert. So anything that you put in your PHP, in your motivation, that demonstrates and that will appeal to this expert that, okay, this person is interesting from that expertise point of view, from a substantial point of view, makes you stand out. Also, on average, any job offer that we put attracts between 150, 200 candidacy. So for a non-HR specialist to go through this, this person will look at in your motivation letter, you highlighted that I know the substance, that I bring this, which is very important substantially for the job I'm applying for. So don't be too general in your motivation letter.
Yeah.
This is what recruiters will look at least at UNEP.
Any recommendations for the recommendations then?
Yeah, I mean, have people, I mean, I usually let people know that I'm applying and what would I like them to say about me. Yeah, I mean, so if you did a special project with somebody and it's that type of expertise looked for on the job, when you say, you know, usually you ask, yeah, may I use you as a reference or a recommendation, and I'm looking to highlight this. I mean, I've even shared my application package with the references, yeah? This is what I'm putting forward. So they can be familiar with what I see my connection is. But yeah, I mean, what you don't want is somebody that's called on the reference and like, I didn't know that I was being listed. That's not a good thing. But we expect the references and recommendations are usually going to sing a positive song. You know, I mean, that's expected of you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, here we got the mic.
Thank you. So I've been working in climate change for almost 12, 15 years now, and mostly in the private sector. Mm-hmm. So if I want to change over and move to a UN-like setup, what should I be putting into the application? But beyond that, how different should I expect the culture to be? Primarily because it's a multilateral organization, so I do expect some difference, but I just wanted to understand from your perspective, because you've come from, both of you have come from corporate. How was your experience?
I'll give a quick one. I mean, one is the competition is a little different. Yeah, so I would say we probably go more on the side of collaboration. And how can we figure out together to get this done than sort of a competitive dollar sign type of motivator. I would say that's one. And I think, again, just in the application, you really want to highlight why is your experience and your skill set appropriate for that job or that area of work that you're looking at?
I think you're right. What we are looking for are, by nature, we are cooperative organization. Inside the organization itself, and it's true for UNFCCC, it's true for UNEP. So there's a lot of interconnection and trying to break all silos and so on inside the organization. But then also to the outside, we can't walk alone. We have always to be together in the UN system. So yeah, that's this collaborative approach, and the capacity to work in multicultural setting is what we're looking at.
Hi, good evening. Angela Bonnet, Climate Change Officer from the Virgin Islands. Firstly, thank you for taking the time to have this engagement with us. I have two questions, which I'll try to put briefly. The first is whether there are any professional certifications that would be useful to have across the board, regardless of the particular area that you're interested in. For instance, project management professional potentially comes to mind. And the second question is, in addition to perhaps for the professional level positions, having a certain minimum number of years of experience, is it a requirement that persons come in with experience at a senior position or a management level position in order to enter in at a professional level within the UN system? Thank you.
May I go first, Bruno, and then I hand over to you. So on certifications, the job opening will usually say if it's required. So if you need, and so for some technical fields, we do need that. But I think, fundamental skills that everybody needs now, is good use of data. Project management, because we do a lot of kind of project-based work. And I think we're seeing even more and more, right? The use of AI. So how are you using, things that are in front of us to, even if you're in a different area, such as finance or adaptation, but how are you using those things that are out there? So certifications, I look at them, I'd rather see experience in delivery than a list of certifications. I mean, if I see both, that's great, but if I see a bunch of certifications and not a practical application, I actually kind of wonder, do you know what I mean? I don't want the theoretician. And then on experience, again, the job openings will say that. It will say, 3 years at X. It's really when if you've been working at like the 7 years and above, then you're moving into a managerial or a supervisor, and it will say that then, 7 years, 3 years at a managerial level. But it's I don't know if you looked at our job openings. We tell you a lot, and maybe in telling you a lot, we don't always tell you a lot, I think. But around the experience, it's pretty clear. But there's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's important to meet the criteria. You can define, for example, a managerial experience in your own way, but make sure that your own way is understood by the recruiter as well. Yeah. That it doesn't end up saying, okay, trying to inflate so that we believe that the managerial experience is there. So yeah, these kind of criteria are necessary to apply, and that's why we put them there. But they are being looked at when we review the applications. Yeah.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. Hi. Thanks very much for this. It's great to have some dialogue on it because sometimes it can seem quite daunting. I'm Shirley Matheson, Global NDC Enhancement Coordinator from WWF, and actually maybe along the lines of what these ladies have been talking about, I'm kind of interested in the kind of mid-career sort of tips and any sort of more reflections to know about, specifically if you're on the roster system and how best to use that, and sort of if there's anything to know and the best way to use that. And I will ask, maybe knowing potentially the answer, presumably if you're on the roster system for Insta, that doesn't apply to the UNFCCC system, or is it helpful to find a way to highlight that? Just for any kind of clarifications would be great. Thank you.
I don't know the answer for UNFCCC on the roster.
I do, yeah. So if you're on the roster, you want it to be almost your second line in your motivation letter. You'll come up as the roster, but if I see somebody that's strong in their roster, our rosters are separate. So you have to, maybe at some point they won't be, but right now they are. So what a roster is, you apply for a job, You go through the whole process and we select someone other than you, but you've passed the written assessment and you're qualified. So the next time a similar job comes up, we can kind of accelerate the process by selecting someone from the roster. So, and at FCCC, we've just expanded the use of rosters up to kind of like first level supervisory. So you want to state that quite clearly. We'll see that, but that's usually something for me anyway as a hiring manager that gets my attention, because I'm going to be able to bring you into the organization quicker. And then for mid-level, I mean, I really do think UNEP, Bruno, you had it on your slide. In our organizations, we are large, and we have speed, but sometimes not the speed that organizations are used to. So I believe what really helps people succeed is you need to know how to run projects from the point of view of managing people, managing money, managing deliverables. So you want to get that skill now, because you want to come in and you want to deliver. It's not that people sit around and say, you go do this and this. We are driving ourselves a lot. So that's at that mid-level, that's what we are really looking for. People that have the whole package, not I just know how to get this done, but you understand the whole thing, and then you can add the bureaucracy around that too. But it's really assembling the resources, which is the people and the money, understanding what needs to get done, and then delivering that. And for that, we look for people that do have like program management and project management skills, yeah? But I really see people succeed in the organization when they understand, a lot of people, but I come kind of from finance, people ignore the money side. You know, they're like, I'm good at this, but we're the stewards of your country's money, and so you need to know how you're spending, you need to know how much you have. So I would say that, make sure your portfolio is well-rounded.
Yeah, I would say the rust, and that's why you need to apply to keep applying. Even if you go through the process and you're not the successful candidate, you'll be indeed put in the roster, and so you keep applying. Do mention the roster indeed in your motivation letter, because sometimes we also, we organizations where the vacancies are rolling, and sometimes we really need to fill this fast. So we do look at the roster. In the last 6 months, I've recruited at least 3 candidates from the roster directly.
Excellent.
And so it is useful to be on it. It's not because you're on the roster that you will get the job.
Yeah.
This I'm not saying, but it can definitely help to be rostered.
Hello, good evening. I hope you're all well, and thank you for the initiative. I was wondering whether people external to the organization and people already in the organization follow the same track, follow the same avenue, or if they don't, do they in the end compete with each other?
Once you are in, if I understand the question, once you are in the organization, if you want to move to another job or if you want to move to a higher category of job, you compete. There's no automatic promotion in the system or automatic movement. At least in UNEP, we're not good at that. So there's competition, and it means that a job which is opened is always opened for internal and for external. There's no pre-arrangement or whatever on a job. Once it's open, it's to the whole world, and we select the best candidate. It can be an internal, it can be an external.
Hi, my name is Maureen. I'm from the United States. I'm representing maybe the other end of the age spectrum. And so I just wondered, just 2 questions. One, what advice you have for people who would be looking to come in at the senior level of the organization. And if the roster system doesn't really apply at that level, do you do active headhunting, or is it really just wait for the website to show a vacancy?
We are headhunting right now. We are, so at the very senior levels, we will use external resources to help us identify. But if you think about what I said at the beginning, right, is that we have large outreach activities and networks, and we use that. So we look to meet people in these settings. and people to refer people to. But the process itself is competitive. Yeah, I mean, I think what Bruno is saying, I really don't know many people that at their first shot came in the door. Do you know what I mean? So and as you go up, there's fewer positions. But I think what the importance again is to highlight is where are your achievements helping the organization achieve what it's trying to do, and it's really making those connections. Myself, I am open to people contacting me. I've always kind of been surprised when we have job openings. I mean, I try to bring people along with me, but you can remember how I started this? How I got in was I called a UN employee that had authored an article, and she said, come and see me. That's how I came in. It's fine to contact people in the organization and say, hey, I'm interested in not get me a job, but I'm interested in what you're doing, and I'd like to learn more about it. Just inform yourself as you apply. I mean, that's it. We're like a public utility, really, in terms of what we do and how we want to bring people in. That's helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of hands. I think the person with the mic wins. Who's... That's so nice.
Hello. I can speak. So good evening everyone. I'm Dr. Deepika Sharma, licensed lawyer from India. I pick up independent consultancies with the various UN bodies. My recent being with UNDRR on gender perspective of disaster risk reduction. So my precise question to my friend who just asked, I have a 23 years of experience. So at this age, are there age restrictions if I want to come on board full time? No.
No. I mean, I think if you are getting close to 65, we don't bring people in, but I think we're all safe here.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
And maybe on this, I mean, because related to the question earlier, as much as we are also looking at making sure that some managerial experience, for example, is not overinflated.
Right.
It's not because we say 12 years of managerial experience, then 20 years don't qualify. So there's no limit on this.
Got you.
Yeah. You can't be overexperienced. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I have a mic guy. Sorry.
Too much.
I'm gonna go next. So I have two questions. For what would your advice be for someone who is early in their career in environment stuff? I'm gonna tell you my case. So I have wanted to apply for the environment program about 2 years ago, but then I gave up because the bar was just too high. When I entered my profile into the system by default, and I just know I would just be hanging around in the pool for a long time. So I decided to go with an NGO instead. For an NGO that has a base I currently work in Canada. For an NGO that is based in Canada just seems so much accessible to me. Because they have a smaller office and all that kind of stuff taken into consideration. So for someone who has a bachelor's degree, for some of the positions I have looked at on the vacancies, usually they require a master and then 2 to 5 years experience, work experience. So that would mean you would need to be 30 years old. And for someone who's in their early phase, I just started my career. So I'm 27. So I wonder what your advice would be for someone who is just starting their career with a bachelor's degree. What kind of jobs am I expecting that would be accessible to me? Should I just go back to school and do a master and then come back?
So on many jobs, indeed, if you don't have a master's degree, the experience that you've accumulated working can count as a master. So it is written in the job description. I can't exactly know. I don't remember exactly the terms, but it is usually described in the education profile requested for the job. Now, it's true that a number of P positions seem difficult to reach if you are a young professional recently graduated. So this is also why in the job families that Kate was showing earlier, look at UNVs, look at GPOs, look at the consultancies where you can build this knowledge of the UN system, and then at a later stage, probably once you've accumulated the number of years necessary, go for the P position. I know it's a bit frustrating. You really want to make a contribution from the start, but this is how we operate. I would say mostly we need a number of years of acquired experience before going to a P2, P3, P4 position.
I have a follow-up question just to build on that. So currently I work in Canada, but I'm not a citizen in Canada. And for the regional office that you are able to operate and work in the UN system through the Canadian office is you have to be a Canadian citizenship requirement. So in that sense, so I'm a citizen of China, but I don't work in China. So would you recommend to get an international work experience? Would it be more possible that I get the work experience through an NGO where I can work internationally, but without that nationality restriction?
So I think so we have two different levels, two different categories of employees in the United Nations. We have many, but two main ones. One is international, and that's you are looking at a professional job. Your nationality does not matter. You can work then, you could be hired, if you are hired, you will work wherever that UN office has hired you. Then we have what we call like local staff, and they're more the administrative support, and they oftentimes countries say you must be from that, it's the UN operating in that country, in this case Canada. The local staff then need to be Canadian. I think that's maybe what you're bumping into. But I mean, honestly, where you work, it's important what you're doing, I would say more than where you're working. Do you know what I mean, geographically? I mean, it's interesting. We don't want everybody coming from the same small town in some same country. We want diversity, but I think it's really what you're doing and how you're achieving in that job that's important. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mariana from Mexico. My question is, does the volunteering in NGOs or in activism count as working experience? Because sometimes it is paid, sometimes it is not. In my personal experience, I have not been paid by my volunteering, but I think I have a lot of experience in things that mostly are defined as work. I don't know.
It's a little tricky, but we do, I think you get 50% credit for your years worked for unpaid work. So for internships or volunteerism, these are the things I think we should look at differently actually going forward. But certainly it would be evaluated as valuable, maybe not like a 1-to-1, 1 year to 1 year.
Hi, I'm curious to know if there are opportunities for people living in cities that will host COPs. I'm from Belém, that will, I don't know if at this point is completely decided, but they may host COP in 2025, and it would be amazing to see people from Belém get engaged in the organization, in addition, of course, to the opportunities of local services providers, but it would be really amazing to see opportunities. So if there's any program that people should know about, so I wanted to know more about that.
There will be, and Brazil, if it is Brazil, will lead that though. So for example, here in UAE, we have about 1,000 UAE, they're not, some of them are citizens, but working here. So usually wherever the COP is there's a large workforce that comes on for, but it's not long, it's like 4 to 6 weeks, so it's not extensive, but it's to help in the organization of the COP. I mean, I'm thinking some of the green vests in here might even be some of those colleagues. So I don't know if it's the level of, rigor of the kind of job you're looking at. But usually we do absorb a lot of local resources when we move in.
The presidency itself, it's outside of us.
Yeah.
I have a question around, academic background. I am training in the social sciences, in anthropology and sociology, and of course, UNFCCC is very science heavy, but for me, climate change has been very interesting to look at through the other lens of social sciences. So I'm wondering what the particular avenues of work look like for someone who is training in the social sciences, and whether there are specific benefits you see, or spikes, so as to call it, within the application process for people that are focused on it.
You want to look for any opening in our adaptation division. So they really look at, just the anthropological studies. What is being done? What has worked? So looking at sort of inside the box and outside of the box at climate solutions, but also then to engage people in climate awareness and climate change. That's our most relaxed group of staff members too, colleagues, I would say. They're very, I don't think in their thinking, but in how they approach the work. So it's, anyway, just that would also be a very interesting place to work. And that's another area where you could reach out to, you find those people on our website. They would love to have a conversation with you.
And let me add, it's exactly the same for UNEP.
Yeah.
We have the full range of profile. From engineers to social anthropologists, from people who have graduated communication to biologists. So we've got a whole range. It shouldn't stop you from applying, definitely not. It's what makes the UN strong, actually. It's diversity of profile and education as well.
Hi.
Hi.
I had a quick question. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rose. I'm an undergraduate from the States. And I was wondering, with the internship program, kind of two things. First, I noticed that a lot of them on the UNFCCC or UNEP website say you must be in your final year of study, and I was wondering if you're going into your final year during the internship duration, if that kind of qualifies. And secondly, I understand kind of from what we've been discussing, what you're looking for in a position for students kind of in their master's or beyond, but what are you looking for interns coming out of undergrad universities?
I know at FCCC what we're looking for. We're really looking for people with data and AI, And if you could even write a cool piece around something, if we've got a data set to explain something. So I think if you remember who we are as an organization, I'm on the operations side. So what I try to do is to sell what we're doing in terms of we're efficient and we have good recruitments, et cetera. So I want an intern that can help me tell that story with data and then some writing. And then on the programmatic side, I would say those are the internships that I'm seeing. You want to pitch something practical that you can give. And as Bruno said, interns turn into our colleagues. So that is a reality. Same with JPOs. So I'm not quite sure how it works, if you have to be in the last year or not. But there's some flexibility. When we have the right person, we're flexible with that.
So would you say just kind of inquire and apply, see how it works? Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure, Rose.
And also, what were your names? I'm sorry, I walked in a little bit late.
I'm Kate McBride, and I love the name Rose, so I just think that's
Thank you. Kate's my sister's name, so I love that name.
There we go, yeah.
Hi, I have a question about the INC. You mentioned the INC on plastic pollution. I'm currently trying to find jobs in this sector, but I haven't seen any postings on the careers website yet in this sector. I'm wondering, are you expecting more recruitment, or is there any expertise that you're looking at maybe that will come up as openings soon? Is there something we can look out for?
Okay, it's always dangerous to talk about the future, but if the INC is successful, it will lead to a multilateral environment agreement, and therefore there will be positions opened and the need to fill these positions. You know that the timeline that we have is to get a treaty by 2025. So I think this is around that period that you will see a number of positions opened for this one, if member states agree, of course. But it's really the INC itself is a very small secretariat at the moment, embedded inside UNEP, and using the resources of UNEP mostly to do the work. So there's not been a lot of positions open around it. But I'm certain it's going to come.
I hope so too.
Thank you. I know we've, as a group, asked a lot of questions about sort of the application process and how you get in. I want to ask a question about once you're in the organization in terms of the environment to expect, work culture, but also impact. I think one of my frustrations in my current position is feeling like I have a lot to offer, but not being able to make impact at the scale that I would like to make and direct impact. So I'm asking that you share some experience in terms of, through your careers in the UN, the sort of impact you feel you've been able to make and the sort of work environment that we can anticipate once you're in the UN system.
Those are good questions. Those are good questions to ask at the end of an interview, I think, too, yeah? Because what we want to make sure is that you fit us and we fit you. I think that's important to know. So I've worked in a lot of different UN organizations, and each one of them is quite different. I would say for peacekeeping and OCHA, humanitarian affairs, it's a quick response. Yeah, we're dealing with situations. So there's a tempo there in the workplace, which is, kind of suited to a high energy person. And maybe managing a little bit of, in some ways you're more organized because you have to always be in this response mode. Where we are now, FCCC, I would say, we are working throughout the year at a high, there's a lot going on, but it's a pretty consistent pace. You get to the COP and it kind of flares up a few weeks before this, and our jobs don't go away. The job is still there and the COP is happening, so there's sort of an intensity there. So that's in terms of pace. But I think I leave it there. Post-pandemic, it's a very different working world. I don't know about UNEP, but many of us are only in the office a couple days a week. So you also have to be kind of ready for that mindset. I think we're still adjusting. And we're seeing that with young people that are coming in. That is something we need to figure out, because you have those of us that know what's going on and how it works, and young people coming in are having to adjust to not having a regular floor full of people. You might have a floor with 30, but each day there's only 5 on that floor. So that's something to keep in mind. We're not an in-office operation, and maybe some people would like it to go that way. I don't think the way of the world is, so, but a good question.
So for UNEP, I would say there are two sides of the coin, and first, we're a normative agency, so we're very happy when we get impact with our reports, with the data being used and so on. It's exciting and not so exciting at the same time. If you're the kind of person who says, I really want to see that beach clean and I want to see that forest restored and I want to be the one planting the tree, maybe UNEP is not exactly the organization you want in the UN system. There are sister organizations that are doing this, something about UNDP, WFP, and so on, and we're working very closely with them. But if you see that impact is about engaging a government and making sure that their NDCs or the NBSAP is going to be aligned to the principle of sustainability and of the environmental guidance that you can give, and you are excited by that kind of impact, then UNEP is for you. This is, I would say, that's the two sides of the coin.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm saying too. With my and WFP, I sometimes wonder if I didn't work at WFP if I would still be in the UN, because you were so hands-on, and you could see how things could go so quickly that even sometimes when you're like, whoa, this is kind of slow, you can. And OCHA was the same way. Yeah, we had a terrible earthquake in Nepal. You just see people move and help, and there's not, as we see here, these long multi-year processes. So I think it's a mix of what you're going to get at different entities. And the other thing is, I think you find people that come in, and you might move around. That's what's interesting about the UN. You can be hands-on. You can be a thinker. You can do a lot of. There's a lot of different opportunity there for your skill and what the interest might be at that point, also just in your life. Yeah.
And I see the light flashing there.
Yeah,
they're going to cut us. I'm just going to use this to say that what is very exciting, both for UNFCCC and for UNEP, is that, and this, I think, Kate, we've witnessed this in the last 15 years, the environment and climate has never been as central politically as it is today. So actually, we might not always see the impact. We might be frustrated because there's no impact, because things don't move as much as we want, but they do move, and they move much more than they were 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's the long term. We are in the long-term business with urgent action, but in the long-term business.
Yeah. So maybe we wrap it up there. I think you picked up our QR codes, and just encourage you, to look across the UN system and certainly at climate change. And just appreciate that so many of you came this late in the day and so many days into the COP.
Thanks.